Hi there, how are you?
Good. How are you, Kendrick?
I'm doing great. Apologies for running a minute late.
Oh, yeah, it's okay. I only charge by every 2 minutes, so you're safe.
How's your afternoon going?
It's actually good. I actually realized it is the afternoon.
You
You're
know,
on the
these days,
you're on the
yes,
East Coast.
I am. I'm in New York right now, but flying back out to SF tomorrow.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, and I know you're in good company with Penny. She's an amazing lady.
Thank you so much for having me, and really looking forward to, to meeting Penny as well.
Well, awesome. So, I did. So it's interesting. I first actually came across your website when I did an interview with Tim Draper about 3 months ago. And to get ready for the event that I knew that I'd be meeting him at, I was doing some research and discovered he had the show, Meet the Drapers, and that's actually like posted on your website. And I was like, so it's just kind of a small world that's the case. So I guess I do want to talk about that a little bit, but maybe a little bit more towards the interview and later on. And so, um, was there anything specific that you wanted to discuss during our call today, or during kind of like what I call the discovery session?
We are just excited to share the story of Republic. And 2 years in, I really think that we have already seen validation as to how what we do level the playing field and invite more people into the ecosystem. So I do have some statistics to share if the conversation goes there.
Awesome, cool. Well, let me grab my list of questions here. Or not questions, but just topics, right? So one of the things that Penny had done is sent over some information, and it seems like one of the things that you're trying to make a concerted effort to do. Well, I guess let's talk about this first. Well, tell me like so I did a little bit of research, and it seems like you were an attorney for AngelList, and then you left there to start the company. So what inspired you to want to make that transition and start Republic?
AngelList has a pretty interesting culture in that everyone has internally the exact same title, venture hacker. And a fintech company, legal, is the same component side by side with engineering to make up a product. So as general counsel for AngelList, just basically dove in deep and helped build the product itself. Out of that entire process, though, it became very clear that what was working well for AngelList in Silicon Valley should be more accessible to everyday people. When I first moved to SF, Uber didn't exist for a year. Wasn't able to grab a cab. And then Uber came along and it changed everything. And I remember sitting in AngelList's office and thinking that, hey, retail investor and opening the gateway, we can basically build what Uber did to transportation, we can do to entrepreneurship and to start investing. And that's kind of the background or the motivation to build Republic.
So obviously it's for early investment, or to raise early capital. So can you share a little bit about like maybe some of the challenges that you had getting Republic off the ground, maybe from a regulatory standpoint? I'm sure there was a lot of obstacles and hurdles to overcome. And then now kind of fast forward to today, like who's an ideal candidate to go on to the Republic site and then say, hey, I'm looking to raise money for my startup?
Yep. So since I started out with that some rather cliche Uber analogy, I'm just going to continue with that for a little bit here. What we're building is actually much more difficult than what Uber built or is building for two main reasons. We're building a fintech company that touches everyday people, grandmas and students. And that means the weight of regulations and compliance obligations fall on you, right? It has to be licensed by FINRA, get audited once a year, record keeping for 7 years, so on and so forth. And the second component is that everyone almost everyone had used a taxi before, and almost no one has ever made a startup investment. So in addition to this operational complexity, you gotta not only get people's attention, but get their attention long enough to tell them about something that they didn't know they can do. So the challenge is on both education as well as operational complexity. So it does take a pretty balanced team on legal and business and tech and messaging and media in order to build, in my opinion, to do what we do. And we're 6 minutes in, so there's a whole lot more to get done. But naturally, because we're so early on, the type of companies that are most suitable for crowdfunding for Republic are companies that everyday people, where may be a student or a dentist, find quickly understandable or relatable, consumer facing, so to speak. Hopefully down the road, with a lot more who are well versed with investing, we're going to see enterprise and medical device and all of that. But right now is primarily consumer facing.
Consumer facing products.
Correct.
And so who's an ideal candidate in addition to is there there's obviously got to be some sort of parameters which make whether or not hey, this is seed capital, this is Series A, who's an ideal candidate to come in as a startup and then utilize the Republic platform?
Yeah, so out of some 3,000 applications, we've selected, 5-6 dozens. So our screening is quite intense. But there's a misconception that what we do is only suitable for very early stage companies. Not so. In addition to financing capital, Republic is a unique marketing tool, truly unprecedented in that if you're a buyer of a vodka product and now all of a sudden you have a chance to invest $100 in that vodka brand, let's call it Sky Vodka. Next time you go to a bar, you're going to keep ordering Sky Vodka for your friends because you're an investor. The same thing when at Christmas or New Year's or July 4th. And so for even mature companies, let's say Lyft and Uber, if Lyft does a campaign on Republic and offers every driver $100 worth of Lyft stock, they wouldn't switch to drive for Uber. So it's not about capital at all. So long-winded way to say that what we do at Republic, crowd investing, is truly suitable for companies across the maturation or maturity life cycle. Basically any company that's not already a public company can really use equity crowdfunding.
Okay, so any company along their journey before going public,
correct,
can utilize the Republic platform to raise capital for their business?
Yes. Okay. We have been in talk. We haven't launched yet, but have been in talk with, the so-called unicorns, a couple of them in Silicon Valley, even though to date, most, but not all, most companies that have successfully raised on the Republic are either in the seed stage and a couple of them in the Series A or post-Series A stage.
So can you think of any specific kind of success stories for companies that have listed their product on Republic and how it benefited them and then how they utilize the capital to grow or to expand?
Two examples. So one is a more mature company, a company called Roomy, R-O-M-I. So they aim to be, Airbnb, but like roommates. It used to be that people go on Craigslist to find roommates, and Roomy aims to provide a better platform to enable young professionals to look for roommates in big cities. They closed an $11 million Series A before launching a campaign on Republic. Why did they do that? Because that Goldman Sachs analyst who invested $200 in Roomy, the next day at the water cooler will be telling all of her friends about it and exactly the customer base. So they closed, several $100,000 from a couple thousand investors on Republic and gain that customer base. So that's one example. The second one is a Latina mom from Fresno, California, not Silicon Valley, and she doesn't have any tech experience. She's been working at a large grocery chain, and she developed this methodology to help very entry level, like baggers at groceries, mature into mid-level positions. There's no product like that out there. It's just a segment of employees that have been overlooked. But she didn't have any links or any way to. She doesn't have wealthy relatives to get her that $50,000, and her background is not one that venture firms would invest in. Not enough validation. So she raised approximately $80,000 on Republic, supported in part by the Latino American community in the Bay Area and beyond, and many who are not. And from that, recruited a CTO, built our product, went on, meet the Drapers, had a chance to meet, and I think was very well received by Tim Draper and his father. And I think she's in discussion with a number of potential VCs. So I hope that will be kind of like the first success story of what equity crowdfunding can do, realizing business ideas and talents that have been overlooked, give them a shot at validating the model so that they then become appealing to venture capitalists.
And I'm sorry if I missed it, but you said that lady's product for the crowdfunding or for the equity crowdfunding was for what?
The product is basically a mentorship and career improvement technology.
Okay.
For low-level employees, for like the shop, the baggers at a Safeway and Lucky, and how to teach them to become the associate manager, not the VP of the world. That is the base. That's where the number of new entries into the job market.
Very cool. So obviously, like going into the educational part of getting the word out so people can understand the value of what you're doing, how would you say you're similar, and how would you say that you're different to maybe some more, I guess, commonly known platforms with sites like Indiegogo, Kickstarter, things like that?
Crowdfunding, and that term is so not friendly, right? We should have a better term for it. But there are different types of crowdfunding. Like Kickstarter is donating, making a donation, or buying a product, something everyone has done. And what AngelList does, which is wealthy, accredited investor investing in venture, is also crowdfunding, but for the rich. And by and large, most wealthy people know how to invest. The world that we're operating in, which is brand new, that encouraging everyday people, even a freshman in college, that in addition to buying a phone case, making a donation to that charity that he or she likes, she too can invest $20, $10, invest, not buying a product, but invest in whatever business that speaks to her that she thinks will be the future of the world. So that difference of skin in the game, of engaging, of not just buying, but investing in those that build things that you like, I think is going to be undoubtedly a mainstream trend. It's just a matter of when. 50% or more of the public will know about that. We're still early on, but I hope it will be sooner rather than later.
Where are you from originally? Are you born here in the U.S.?
No, my whole family immigrated from Vietnam to California when I was in middle school, last year of elementary school.
Was English something that you learned then when you moved here?
Yeah, most, I think Asia, almost everyone has some at least English education at a very young age, but immersing myself in an environment where everyone around me speaks English, definitely California was the first one.
So one of the things that seems to have occurred over the last couple of years is more of an awareness of maybe, I don't know if it's called the chasm or the lack of diversity in the world of startups between finding, like as a male-dominated industry, right? Or startups are maybe predominantly male-led, and then the investors are also male-led, and it's kind of created this kind of ecosystem versus like now trying to expand and becoming more diverse. So would you have any insights as far as how you think Republic is helping to lead the charge to creating more diversity and empowering more women startups and to help more people fund women-based startups?
The uneven landscape of venture financing and access capital is definitely not new, as you had just summed up. I think that it's not because of any, in most cases, intentional effort to not be inclusive. It's just that, in person, we tend to think that people from a similar educational background, from the same school, from the same profession, we tend to give them a little bit more credibility. Not only that, and if those are the people that we see more day in, day out, at the outcome, the net result is the same and the same. So when a lot of people invest through a computer screen, and it's not just one or two or three investors dishing out $2 million, but 5,000 investors from all over the country investing $500,000 into a company, they are going to look at the story, and naturally it's going to level the playing field by itself. And the data today very much on our end validates that principle, that hypothesis. Today, over 45% of investment on Republic go to women founders, and some more than 25% go to underserved founders, Black and Hispanic. The latter category represent in the low single digit within venture capital, venture-backed founders in the Valley. So I think it's already shows that that's in fact the case. We have a lot more to do, a lot more work to do, but we're gonna hopefully we'll get there one day. That is no longer an issue.
So can you reveal any sort of metrics as far as what your investor base looks like? Because basically anybody who's over the age of, is it 18? Is it over the age of 21 can go and say, hey, I'm going to invest in this cool consumer product, the ABZ, drone or whatever the product is, right? So anybody can come in and invest, not be an accredited investor with $1 million in equity or liquid assets. Anybody can come and invest. For the people that are coming into doing that, what kind of metrics do you have between like male versus female people that are saying, hey, I'll invest in these startups?
Yep. So the investors, those who have already dished out an investment are still predominantly male, even though the number of women founders in our platforms, are almost 50-50, right? I think that speaks to what I just mentioned a moment ago, that is people are not purposely investing in male or female for the most part. That you have, male investors, retirees in Milwaukee consistently deploy capital into companies founded by women. But the demographics really does basically the entire tapestry of Americana, from Alabama to Miami to Seattle to New York. Pretty even mix. What we have seen is that, for example, millennials and people in tech have been investing, fewer of them have been investing than we expected, and the retirees, particularly people in the Midwest, not the two coasts, have been investing at a higher rate. And I think it's because of the time that they have to dive deep, as well as the relative lack of access to startup investment opportunities. But it's pretty evenly spread so far.
Interesting. Okay. So
predominantly in the 35 to 50 age range, rather than very young, the younger population.
So there's two questions I want to make sure I remember to ask. So one is, obviously you're opening the doors to a new set of potential investors to come in and participate in a process that may be somewhat unfamiliar to them. So how do you help to educate these new investors in the potential risks of, hey, I am going to be investing in this company well, let's just not use the Sky Vodka because let's say they're a little established, right? But like, let's say like a new company that's just in the process of raising $50,000. How do you help to educate that investor, the crowd investor who's not the seasoned venture capitalist, that, hey, there's a potential, like, you potentially run the risk of losing the money, or if it doesn't pan out, does the money get sent back? Do they have to meet like some sort of Groupon goal and get the money to like tip it and they get the money? Because like Kickstarter, you might get all the money, and Indiegogo, I think you can keep whatever you get. So how do you manage that?
Yep. Aside from the fact that, as I mentioned, our acceptance rate for projects applying to fundraise is quite low. We have a very involved due diligence process. That said, no investor can invest on Republic without seeing openly, clearly, that do not invest if you are not ready to lose the entirety of your invested capital. Early stage private investing is extremely risky. Most often it's all or nothing. It's not like you get 80% back, like you lose all. And if you invest in 10, most likely you're gonna lose at least 7 or 8 of them. The one that returns capital typically returns in multiple, not 20, 30%, but that's why diversification. Do not invest small amount of money at first, and in as many as you feel compelled, because that's why our minimum amount in some cases is $10, $20. It's not like $20,000, but it's a lot of fun. I think most people have invested in a startup. It's better than reading like a story. These are like real people solving real issues. And at least in my case, I have lost it. I've lost a lot of, in many of the deals I've invested in, things didn't pan out. I gotta say I've never regretted, and I've always invested a small amount because of what I've learned from following the story and from even just from business and finance and whatnot as an investor. It has been a great experience.
So one of the things that I believe that Kickstarter Indiegogo will do is kind of give some semblance of support in terms of educating the person that's participating and looking to raise funds, some sort of like marketing education, and like, here are some steps that you should do. So what does Republic do to empower its companies, its startups, to go out there and like market the fact that they are in the market for Republic? And are you using any of the funds that you guys are internally to actually say, hey, we're going to help try to support marketing beyond just doing it yourself?
A lot of founders think that, hey, once you get accepted and you set up and you launch a campaign, that money is just gonna like flow in. It doesn't work like that anywhere, right? If you are fundraising, whether for Girl Scouts or for your startup from venture firms or raising on Republic, you gotta pound the proverbial pavement. It may be online or actual on Sand Hills Road, but we give the know-how, the tools on how to draft an email to your friends, the pace at which you should follow up. And quite frankly, particularly for very new projects raising their first capital, you got to prove that you can raise from friends and families and the people who know you, and got to have their conviction, because if you cannot get these people to believe in what you're building, how is it that you're expecting a complete stranger 3,000 miles away on a computer 6 minutes in to believe in you? So it's a lot of preparation of holding hands and giving know-hows, and in some cases, lending both tools as well as human resources to help them execute.
Awesome. So the Republic platform basically you're helping them to go through the vetting process, and I want to talk about that here a little bit more in a second. But they go through the vetting process with your team, right? And we'll talk about the process. They're approved. And now I'm assuming you're giving them guidance on how to go out and kind of spread the message, but the Republic itself isn't somehow in some way like funding like any sort of campaigns or external promotions to try to drive traffic back to the crowd investing page?
No. So part of us being a heavily regulated entity, you have to comply with restrictions, and the issuer, the startups, also have to comply with restrictions on what they may or may not do in promoting the campaigns, right? Disclose all of the promotional fees, etc. So Republic itself cannot just go outside of our platform to push a particular project. Internally we have, I think, 5 lawyers and a team of over 24, compared to most businesses, a heavy on legal compliance for that exact reason.
So would you say that the vetting process helps to improve the potential prospect of having the opportunity to have even though it's a highly risky investment, but it increases the odds of having a successful outcome with the investment? And then, so with that being said, would you please explain because I like, especially for like an entrepreneur audience, I'm trying to think of like, maybe you have a list of like 3, 5, 7 tips that you can share on things that you would be looking for a successful startup?
Absolutely. Given that our team came from the VC Silicon Valley ecosystem, we apply some of the same criteria. Product market fit, traction, runway meaning how much money do you have left in the bank before you go bankrupt. If you only have 60 days left of money and you launch a campaign running it for 60 days, well, I mean, by the time the campaign is done, you're already bankrupt, right? So we obviously, so that's a key element. The team, are they resilient enough? Do they have domain expertise? So some of these are common elements that a VC would be looking for. But in addition to that, we want to make sure that we don't waste a founder's, entrepreneur's time if they're not mentally ready to execute on the campaign. So bandwidth on their end and the readiness to follow the marketing guidelines that we provide to engage their audience is a lens that's unique to us, so that unless they have that, we're like, hey, the time is not right for you. Come back 6 months later when you have a bit more time to have a successful campaign. And last but not least, we do pay attention on the mission behind any company. This is not about, it doesn't have to be saving children in Africa or Asia. It's just an authentic mission beyond just bottom line. And why is that? Being an entrepreneur, building a startup is very, very hard. Unless you believe in something more than just, that potential of being rich, you're not going to be able to overcome the most challenging phase of being a founder. But if you believe in it, that a much higher chance. So we're looking out for investors on the Republic platform, and we apply these lenses in hope that the ones that we pick have net a much higher probability of realizing the mission and building a profitable business.
So after having been doing this for 2 years now, right? A little bit over 2 years, correct?
We just passed our 2-year anniversary on July 18th.
Oh, well, happy anniversary.
Thank you.
So obviously you being a startup of your own, you're like eating your dog food, right? So I guess one of the questions that I would ask is, so take me through the process, right? Like, I have a startup, I've got some software, some like cool gadget, and I come and I visit the platform. And like, is there a cost for me to come in and even apply? And go ahead.
No, there's no cost for you to come in and apply. So in short, in order to run a campaign to raise money on Republic, you got to be an operating business in the US. And then assuming that you pass and you submit an application, we always ask for a pitch deck, document that you use to fundraise from VC. And in there, we see the information, we apply our own lens, we say, yes, would love to have you on board. Then by law, you have to file a short financial statement and do an SEC filing. So we have preferred accounting firms and lawyers and negotiated the rate down so that someone would convert your financial to GAAP with a securities lawyer helping you prepare a lengthy SEC filing. All of that all in for a few $1,000s. None of it goes to Republic. This is between $3,000 and $5,000 in base cost. And then after that, our team will help you build out a deal page, meaning a video, pictures explaining the deal teams, what it is that you do in a way that can be quickly and easily consumable by the public, and then you launch the campaign.
So in essence, what you're helping entrepreneurs and startups to do is to kind of navigate the challenging waters of how do I begin the process of raising capital for my company, because otherwise they're like, I'll read about it online, and then I got to try to figure out how I can get lunches with venture capitalists and get their attention. Right. So what you're saying is there a restriction? So I'm assuming there's a restriction within the platform that if I've listed my company with Republic and I'm like saying, hey, I want a round of $50,000, let's say, I'm restricted that I couldn't go to outside the Republic platform and then like get another 100,000 from like a Tim Draper.
Oh, no, not at all. Quite on the contrary, we not only encourage people to raise from VC as well as raising on Republic, because we have deep network contacts within the VC space. We often open up our network to the companies that launch on the platform. I mean, Madeboss, the founder that ultimately went on to meet Tim Draper, is one such example, but not the only one. Think of crowdfunding and startup and Republic financing to be supplemental to venture financing. One is with the advice of VC and big checks, and the other one is not only is capital, all of a sudden your customer are now going to be your brand ambassadors. Usually you got to pay a lot of money for that. Now you're getting money in and yet convert these people into evangelists. So it's quite supplemental, and I think the industries, crowdfunding and venture capital, will for a long time be supplemental rather than one eating the other one.
So I'm assuming you're familiar with the Groupon business model, am I required to have, in order to have a successful campaign and collect all the funds, hit my goal, or am I awarded whatever it is that I've accrued during the process?
So you have to set a minimum. So when, say, you, Eric, are looking to fundraise $50,000 to launch a new product or to open the second food truck, if you do not meet at least that minimum amount, then we'll return money back to investors. But once you meet that minimum amount, that you can collect it. Why? Well, you're estimating the cost of that second food truck to be $50,000. Now you only raise 15, and you take that. Well, you're not going to be able to get that food truck. You're just going to waste investors' money, and everyone gets nothing out of it, right? So there are rationales for many of these rules. Some of them are a little arbitrary, but this one is actually a good one.
So it seems like a really innovative process, right? Almost if like an investor was like listening to us talking, or a startup founder was watching us talk or listening to us talk, they're like, wow, so you're saying I can just, like, in addition to all the other things I might be doing for venture capital or marketing, I can just go and submit my listing to Republic, right? So what are the risks for them to participate in the process with you? And then, well, let's just finish with that first, and I have another question. follow up?
Well, there is no risk aside from bandwidth. And being a founder, time is everything. I mean, I've been running behind for 2.5 years now, right? So that obviously, if you don't run a successful campaign, then you lose valuable time that you can deploy toward knocking on more doors of VC on Sand Hill Road. But if you are willing to deploy that bandwidth, think of it as a marketing initiative on top of a financing initiative. And if you're upfront and are prudent and thoughtful about the information that you're disclosing, then certainly there's very, very few downside that I can think of. And I think people who have launched campaigns in Republic almost uniformly have been very happy, not just about the money. We have over 90% success rate, but the other secondary consequential value that they've gained from a Republic campaign. I highly encourage people to look at it carefully, and we would never launch something unless we think that, in our estimation, it's not a waste of time.
So once they've been accepted and vetted and they're on the platform, does the founder get any sort of ongoing mentorship and advice? Like they can pick up the phone and call Kendrick or one of your team and be like, hey, I just had this idea to like pivot and take my company differently, or what should I do with the money now that I've got it, right? Like I got 100,000 instead of 50,000. What do I do with this extra $50,000, right? So do you offer any sort of ongoing mentorship?
I've never got the question that what do I do with the extra money that I raised that I didn't mean to raise. No one has asked me that, but people ask a lot of questions. You know, we view what we're building as a community, not just an investment platform. And I'm so grateful for the entrepreneurs that this is still new, 2 years in, it's still new, that they want to include their own community. So I view them all as long-term partners. We have account managers to help founders through the fundraising process. But after that, we send them reminders. We give them tax filing tips. We build out a whole community to include, and we make it easy for them to engage their own investors as well. This is a little fun fact. When we launched the first 4 campaigns in July 2016, over the next 6 months, I think I spent at the very least 40 hours of my own time with each founder or each of the 4 companies, going the row with them, prepping them on how to do a pitch, aligning them up with conferences or whatever. But obviously, as we grow, I no longer have that level of involvement with the newer campaigns on Republic. That's not feasible. But I'm committed to opening up my network to anyone within the community that's helpful to their entrepreneurial ambition.
So each person who's vetted and gets placed into the platform gets an account manager and does receive ongoing support beyond just the initial round? Or like
Yes,
they got funded, they got their $50,000 and hey, you go fly, be free, right?
Yeah. No, they do have an account manager during the duration of the campaign. And then after that, we act as a resource, and then, they email me, we invite them to conferences. When they run into an issue, they often email any member of us, and we get back to them right away. So it's very much an ongoing, continuous relationship. And Republic, because of our commission, we're essentially an investor in each and every single company. So there's that alignment in interest on our end to help each of these companies succeed as well.
Well, I was wondering when you were going to talk about how your company generates revenue, right? Because obviously it's like, hey, go to Republic and submit your information and it's free and they'll do all these amazing things. And so tell us a little bit about how the program works in terms of you being an investor going through the process and how you raise capital or generate revenue for your company.
Yeah. Not so glad to admit that we've been operating at, by a long shot at a net loss, in that we're expending a lot of capital and human resources to prove and help this early generation of crowd entrepreneurs succeed. But our standard fee commission is a 6 and 2, in that if a company successfully fundraise $100,000 on Republic and get 1,000 investors, we get $6,000 in cash commission and a 2,000 worth of securities in the company. So to give you an example there, usually it would cost a company a lot more than $6,000 to gain even 100 evangelists or to gain the exposure. And the 2,000 in securities can be very meaningful. If a company that we launch happens to be the next Uber, that $2,000, over a number of years can be worth millions or tens of millions. Out of 100, very few would be the next Uber, but that's the promise, the potential of early stage investing, and also a reminder of diversification.
So that's an interesting point that you talk about the 6 and the 2 and comparing. So what historically would you say that on average, and again, this is kind of a wild question, right? Huge range and things vary, but to your best knowledge, what would you say that same person would have to give up in equity in order to be able to raise $100,000 with a venture capitalist or an angel investor?
Yeah, I mean, an accelerator like Y Combinator or 500 startup, for, I think this is back years ago, for ranging anywhere, these accelerators and incubators ranging anywhere from $20,000 to 100 to 120 would typically take somewhere on the low end, 5-6% of your total company's stock equity, all the way up to 15% and more. This is not what we're taking is not 2% of your company's stock. We're taking $2,000 worth of securities, meaning if your company is worth, $2 million and we're taking $2,000 worth of that. So the equity component that Republic receive for the transaction is orders of magnitude below venture investor in the seed stage.
Wow, that's impressive. So obviously, maybe not obviously, I'm a big fan of Shark Tank, right? And I actually just had a chance to visit the set of Shark Tank.
Amazing.
And meet all the sharks. So what's your perspective on Shark Tank, its popularity, and then you're watching these entrepreneurs going and pitch on basically the largest stage for like fundraising in the business world, maybe the most successful business show of all time. Is it tough for you to watch like these business owners being like, gosh, you could have brought your project to us and you would have got 6 and 2 versus giving up 30, 40, 50% of that company?
Not at all. If anything at all, I'm like happy for them, because the value of something like Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, or Barbara, or Mark Cuban bring to a business is unique and so valuable in and by itself. As I mentioned before, I don't think of these venture capitalists as being somehow mutually exclusive with crowdfunding. And I might have mentioned that, but Shark Tank was the inspiration for Meet the Drapers. In fact, we had in the early years conversation with Kevin O'Leary on Shark Tank's collaboration with Republic, because we envisioned that one day people at home watching someone pitching to Mark or Kevin, and at home the audience can invest either side by side or bet against them. And hopefully, I think that future can still come to pass. It always lengthy and complicated to deal with major institution like ABC and but hey, yeah, the Meet the Drapers show is a partnership with Tim Draper and Sony Entertainment, a different division of Sony, but Sony itself is behind Meet the Drapers.
Awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about the Meet the Drapers, the show? I mean, Like, because obviously I don't know that it has large syndication. Like, if someone wants to watch it, where would they go to view the show and see it?
Yes, so we in the process of filming the second season, but the first one, essentially think Shark Tank, but at home people can invest. And instead of the sharks, it's three generation of the famed VC Draper's family, Bill, the OG venture capitalist, Tim, his son, and Jesse, the granddaughter of Bill, and usually with a guest judge, someone who's known in investing or in venture. The show, the first beta version was on Sony Cable. So it was air, and the audience has a focus on South Asian community. And the second season, we've been told that it's going to be aired still on cable, but widely in over 2-3 dozen countries, obviously including the US. But details as to which cable channel exactly, we're still waiting to find out. But it soon will air, hopefully by late fall or early winter.
So will it encompass what you had referenced before, where there's not only the Drapers and the judge who are deciding whether they're going to invest, will the audience be able to also crowd invest?
Yes, very much so. That is that they will see, Joanne and Kim and Bob pitching to Tim and getting feedback and critique. And at home, there's a link. They can just go on there and on their phone, they can go on Republic and invest $50, $20 with even their credit card or Bitcoin if they so feel compelled. And, a good 30% or so of the contestants, the startups on this new show, the second season of Meet the Drapers, will be blockchain enabled, given that it's so relevant to global attention nowadays.
Which is where I was about to go next in our conversation, blockchain and cryptocurrency, right?
I read your mind.
So one, how come, is there a reason that you don't broadcast the show online? Is it because Sony wants to control the distribution?
Correct. That Sony and Tim, I'm sure, will have future distribution plan to make the show an old season available, through various media platforms. But the second season, I've heard, I've been told that it will be viewable online in addition to on TV.
And where is it filmed?
So the first season was filmed entirely in California, and right now is the second one is being filmed, but mainly in San Mateo, California, at something is known as Draper University. That's the hero city, Tim Draper's campus for entrepreneurs.
Awesome. Yeah, it'd be cool. Will it be filmed in front of a studio audience?
No, I don't believe so. I think that there are just because it's such a community at Hero University that people show up to watch, but it's not meant to have like, an audience like Saturday Night Live. If you're happen to be in town during a filming day, I would obviously love to extend an invitation and invite you down to spend a few minutes with us.
So I'm just going to give you a free thing, all right? You should have an in-audience crowd, and they get to be the fourth or fifth judge as a collective, right? So they're there, they vote, and whichever project that they like the most best can be considered a vote, and kind of maybe sway the Drapers to whether or not they're going to decide. And then if they still want to invest themselves, they could. So
I'm gonna suggest that to Sony producer. I'm right after the call, like texting Sarika right now.
And I hope somehow that benefits me in some way someday.
Oh, there's no doubt. Exactly. If that's the one feature that makes Meet the Drapers the next Shark Tank, dinner every Friday for the rest of the decade or the next decade on me.
On a yacht that you bought.
Exactly, on a yacht.
So it's seriousness. So I do want to switch because I want to take some time. And do you have a hard stop at 3:00 or 9 minutes?
Yes, I am good for until about 310 or
Okay,
610.
then that should be more than enough. Um, one question before I move into that. Meet the Drapers is the people who are featured on that show, have they gone through the same Republic vetting process? Like, are these people that went through the process with you and that your team said, here's the people we're going to invite into the show?
Yes, so SUNY and the Drapers can send candidates to us, but anyone, any project that can accept investment from the viewing public has ought to have passed due diligence and go through our standard screening process.
And then one quick question I almost forgot to ask. What happens what are the risks to your company and the investor if you do find a company, right? Like someone raises the $50,000 for the cool widget, right? And then just for whatever reason, that does the money get held in escrow, and that that entrepreneur that's the founder, the CEO, they're like getting distribution from it when they need it, and you guys authorize it? Like, how do you prevent that entrepreneur from saying, well, I just got $50,000 and I just went out of business, and so I'm just going to go to Thailand or wherever and live the good life?
Yeah. That's why the business that we're in is not for the uninitiated or a team that is not experienced with vetting, assessing aspiring entrepreneurs. The scenario that you just, proposed is very much possible. I have no doubt that over the years that there will be such cases. Someone launched a campaign on Kickstarter raising money to build a product and decided not to build a product and go buy, Honda Civic and drive around, right? I mean, it's really hard to
Explore for a Honda Civic, no offense.
Well, the average campaign on Kickstarter is well below $15,000. It may be a used Honda Civic.
I am so putting that in the article, by the way, that here's this, like, I don't know what your net worth is, but you're like, people walking away with $50,000 and like, yeah, they'd be excited to go buy a Honda Civic.
It's definitely, by now through my years as an angels, I've looked at thousands of decks, have met entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs in the hundreds, if not in the thousands. And that's why no one would go through and launch a campaign on Republic without several conversations with our team, most often on a video call. And I'm glad to report that even for the industry, not just Republic, and the top players in the industry are all very experienced with high integrity. People's companies fail for any number of reasons, but we haven't had a case where it's just bad faith, failure to deliver on that promise. Particularly for one added reason. If you really just want to defraud people and do things that you don't mean to do, there's so many ways to do that without forming a company, go through Republic due diligence, file a form with the SEC, open you up to the Eye of Sauron, meaning SEC examiner and enforcement officers, and then just to take that, that would be a very dumb way to go about it, much less that you have to convince people like me and the team of your authenticity. Is it possible to have the scenario you raised at Republic? Possible, but highly unlikely, and I hope they will never for many years to come.
That sounds fair enough. So let's switch over to cryptocurrency, right? Blockchain. So what's your opinion on the industry as a whole, right? What's your perspective on Bitcoin in particular? And where do you think Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is going to be going in the future?
I think it's a very important technology that potentially, in my opinion, rival that of the internet. But in a very practical sense, in almost way like an understated sense. It didn't just come onto the scene and all of a sudden before you didn't have the internet and now you do. The importance of it is that it eliminates the middleman. in virtually every single industry. Are you using a credit card, or your credit card company is the middleman? Are you transferring something through a trusted party, an escrow agent? That's $1 trillion industry built on the notion of a middleman. So you're going to see blockchain technology disintermediate the value of that third-party middleman, and by virtue of that, disrupting massive businesses, financial services and beyond, and providing value to the the end of life consumers. So I'm extremely long and excited for the many use cases of blockchain technology. Republic, of course, is also looking into employing that tech. Because I'm so long in the technology, that I am also very long on the major currencies. It's not in my position, nor do I hedge or bet on near-term volatility. But if I think that anyone with any aspect, any sort of disposable income, should allocate a little bit of money into the major cryptocurrency, but hold it with like an 8-10 years out view. Because you know what, if you get involved and you lose everything, don't obviously invest all of your disposable income. But if you invest a little bit and you lose, play along with what is a really fun new trend. If you don't invest, and that $100 in 10 years, had you invested in Ethereum or Bitcoin, that could have been $100,000. You're gonna like go to bed at night and say, God, I should have listened to Eric and invested, and I didn't, right? So that's my take on it.
So when you say a little bit, and I know that is different for different people, right? But just as a general like rule of thumb, what would you say a little bit is? And then when you talk about major cryptocurrencies, you talked about Ethereum and Bitcoin. Is there any others you would consider major?
Little bit, 6-7 years ago, or 5-6 years ago, there were students on campuses like MIT and Berkeley and Iowa State that one way or another invested like $50, $30 in Bitcoin, and now they're very, very happy with it. So it can be as small as like, $50, $100. That is a lot of money, I understand, for a lot of people, but to the extent that you can, at the end of the day, a pitcher of beer is already $30 in many cities. And the same rule towards startup investing is the same that I apply to our crypto investing diversification. But given that, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and obviously like Light and Ripple and Stellar are like the more noted ones. So the risk of upside return huge compared to stock, but still smaller than the new ICO, the new tokens. But they're less risky compared to the Republic token, for example. So if you have a few $100, maybe $50 in each of the top 5 or 6, you only have $50 to spend. I don't know, put everything in Bitcoin or Ethereum.
Awesome. Sorry, I was turning off an alarm. So the next question I want to ask is, there's obviously, there was this huge spike in excitement, like Bitcoin was nearly $20,000, right? And now it's like in the last week, it's gone from like 6,400 to over 8,000 in a matter of days, right? They're talking about maybe now that the bear is over, the bull is coming. So one, do you believe in Tim Draper's prediction? Like, how accurate do you think his prediction is that it's going to hit $250,000 by 2022?
Tim is a very wise man. He was right about the $10,000 mark. So if I must place a bet, I would always bet on Tim's side. He's been right once. probably right again.
When did you first, I'm assuming you personally are invested in the cryptocurrency and have a portfolio. When did you first purchase, maybe you don't want to disclose this for...
Oh, no. Yes, of course. When, funnily enough, in 2013, when I was interviewing for AngelList, they were hiring the first, I think, non-engineer and bringing me in as the general counsel. And I know that Naval is a huge fan of blockchain in general. And so I'm like, before that interview, I better go through, buy a bunch of Bitcoin, be well versed with the process so that I don't look like I'm uninitiated. So thanks, Naval.
Very cool. And then obviously there's talk about what it's going to take for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies to explode into the market, and all the powers that be are talking about how important it is to be able to unlock institutional investment money. And that in September, there's ETFs that might be making it able that it's easier for people, kind of like what you're doing with Republic, make it easier for people to access investing in the vehicle, right? As an attorney, right, who's very familiar with SEC regulations, what's your perspective on what it'll take for whales and large institutional dollars to flow into the ecosystem for crypto?
That float of money has already arrived. My prior life was in fund of funds in Wall Street, and I had not seen the kind of enthusiasm, the kind of actual deployment of money into both the large currency as well as token sales by traditional funds and institutions and family office. And Goldman Sachs, Citi, JP Morgan, all of them have internal blockchain teams.
So I'm pretty much, I think wraps up the majority of what I wanted to ask, which is, I think, good timing for you. One question I would want to ask as it relates to, what do you think the effect of where you talked about, and am I able to publicly disclose this, that you believe in the second season that as much as 30% of the participants in season 2 of Meet the Drapers will be blockchain based?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So what do you think that will do to the cryptocurrency industry? Because like that is such, like, if you're talking about speculation, like doesn't even, it's like the wild west, and like there's all kinds of like things I don't even want to say, right? That's just happening in the ecosystem. How much of an impact do you think that your show and going through the Republic vetting process is going to have on, one, lending credibility to the industry as a whole and driving cryptocurrency to the next level with mass adoption?
That's a great question, a really challenging one. I would say that even, forget about Republic, even with Tim's brand and the credibility behind that, because crypto and blockchain technologies and the fascination about this industry has already matured in a major way that I don't think it will add more to the awareness or the excitement for it. Of course, it will add a little, those who view it and will see that, oh wow, Tim is quizzing these projects and he likes this one, he doesn't like that one. And so they may, learn a bit more by watching the show and feel compelled to invest a little bit of money into one versus the other one. But net, I hope obviously that the show will be very successful, and we'll do our best, but it'd be a little, hubris of me to think that it will make a dent in landing the legitimacy. I do agree that the industry is full of so much noise, and in some cases, bad faith, fraudulent attempts to monetize on the enthusiasm. And, as with anything, or fad or trend, even trends that are here to stay, look to the industry influencers, the voices that are already credible, and help them be that filter to cut through the noise and hopefully find your ways to more interesting, more credible people. Doesn't mean that these are going to be necessarily win-win and successful investments, but at the very least, they are, they're good people trying to do good things.
Awesome.
Biz Famous.